Today on Rings, Gears, and Opinions, Ken sits down with Lee Hurley. Lee is an Army veteran, a race car driver, a race car builder, an engine builder, and a radio host. At a young age, he followed in the footsteps of his older brother Jack, riding in the tow truck to watch races at the Iron Bowl and at other tracks in Birmingham, Alabama. He had a notable and inspiring racing career that began by racing Micro Midgets in the 1950s. If you were in the golden ages of motorsports, you needed this guy on your team. He's one of the best friends a race car has ever known. In this two-part interview, Ken sits down with Lee to pick his brain on his racing career and his personal ups and downs that has brought him to where he is today. We hope you enjoy part one of the Lee Hurley interview.
Mr. Lee Hurley, thank you for coming today, Lee.
Thank you, Mr. McFarland.
It's great to have you.
Great to be here.
Yeah, I know.
Good I can be here, and good you can see me.
That's correct.
That's what happens when you get old.
That's true. It's pretty neat. We came in today, and we got a micro midget here today that you were very involved with back in the day, and I just wanted to bring it out. Tell us a little bit about your history with that.
Oh, that brought a lot of memories back. That all started at a place called Lawnco, which was a lawnmower repair and sales shop across from the Birmingham Fairgrounds. Actually started, I guess, an official type job working there, assembling lawnmowers. If you can imagine, they would order a truckload of decks and handles and blades and wheels and all that stuff had to be assembled, and they sold them. That this is in the era when gas-powered lawnmowers were just coming around. I mean, very few people had one.
Yeah.
But Lawnco were selling these things at a really reasonable price, and sold a lot of them.
And business was started by two brothers?
Yeah, two brothers, sellers, Flip Sellers, Ernest Sellers. Both of them were employees out at TCI, U.S. Steel, and they did the Lawnco was kind of their sideline, and Flip was also an innovator in stock cars, in the old stock cars where they were building the flatheads, and really back in the early 50s when Birmingham was dirt.
Yeah.
They also was the innovator and starting of the Micro Midget area in the Birmingham area that was run out at the place called the Iron Bowl, which was out towards the Irondale, other side of the Irondale area. It has a lot of memories from that time. The old Micro Midget that you have sitting at the door when it came in was a product of Billy Reeves, who was a daily contractor, but he was a real metal and innovator. And if you saw the cowling of that thing, that just was a flat piece of aluminum that was hammered out and made into something. This was one of his talents that came from probably his military background, aircraft background, which gives you a lot of metal work.
And he'd done that for a lot of people, I guess.
They would build cars and people would buy them.
Okay.
I don't think he really went into the business of just building and selling, but they ran a car, multiple drivers. I think Ernie Spangler drove for him at one time. I know Ray Putman drove for him at one time.
Yeah.
It was an era of time when I was growing up. I mean, it was almost pre-adulthood. When I started there, I think I was 13 years old.
Wow.
And I remember I would ride my bicycle I went to Ensley High School, and I'd ride my bicycle over to Lawnco to work after school.
Yeah.
And that was the mode of transportation it started with, and then I actually graduated into the Cushman scooters. I picked up one that was broken down and repaired it, and made me a gas-powered scooter. Sometimes there's a little difficulty. I'd have to steal some of the gas out of the lawnmowers to be able to get home. But,
Yeah. Let's go back. I want to go back to your childhood. You were born in Inslee, Alabama.
Yeah. I was a a product of, to start with, my oldest brother, Jack, who was 19 years older, was a military guy. He also owned a shop in Central Park called Central Park Garage. That's where I probably got grease under my fingernails at a very, very early age.
And I think you shared with me back then that Jack was involved in racing. And
yeah, they actually, and this was, I've got a little book at home that's got some data in it, but he actually ran a car at Daytona on the beach.
Oh, really?
He drove it. It was a car that they built at Central Park, probably of the 44 type car, but they brought it to Daytona, and my understanding is it had a problem and ran out into the water.
Oh no!
You had to put it out, whatever. But that was, some of these stories you have to just kind of ad lib and find somebody that knew something about it.
That's correct. That's what this is all about too. Is this
that probably was the start. The Central Park Garage was probably the start of my interest in being into the mechanical world.
Yeah. And then your brother had to close his business and went off to war.
He closed his business and went into World War II. Came out of World War II, reopened the business, and closed it back down to go into the Korean conflict.
Wow, isn't that amazing?
When he was in World War II, he was a battalion tank commander under Patton, and I think he and Patton had some kind of relationship. I see some of the old history books that my sister-in-law had some information about that, but
wow,
I never kept it. His daughter didn't keep any of that stuff. So
yeah, there's no doubt in that Central Park area back in the day, there's a group of characters, you might say, that
I don't know about the word characters. There were some interesting people.
Okay.
Chester Honeycutt and Marlon Barber and Stafford, Ed Stafford, Tommy Stafford, Wayne Sparks. Bill Mullins actually was in that area, although he didn't live in the Central Park area, but he came to the garage a lot. There was a lot of history that came out of Central Park. There was I guess you want to call it a bar or whatever, called Dan's Tavern. That was right there on Bessemer Road, where just about everybody went to play pool and drink a beer.
Fortunately, I was well enough to get to know a lot of these guys. I think, how many people owned that thing at one time? I think Marvin owned it, Evans owned it, a bunch of different guys. They just changed hands.
It wasn't a hole in the wall, but it was a little corner building that nobody could own. They had to lease it.
Yeah.
And so, it would, one of them would run out of money, another one would pick it up, and another. It just kind of round robin, but it always stayed open, and it was there.
Neat stuff. I always enjoyed being around every one of those guys and yourself. It's just everybody had a story to tell. So I was always captivated by listening to those stories. And
there was a lot of stories that somebody the other day mentioned the deal about that back in the 60s. Bobby Allison was being competitive with the Pettys, and Maurice Petty, who was Richard's brother, who was a kind of a different sort of person to start with. He was their engine builder, but he also had some handicap. He was a little.
Is it polio? Somebody
I
said
think
he
it was polio.
Yeah, I
or
think
something like that.
I did hear that.
But he was mean.
Yeah, right.
And I remember one race that Bobby had outrun Richard and with a Chevelle on a short track. If I'm not mistaken, it was at Montgomery.
Okay.
And Maurice jumped on Bobby, and I don't know if he did any harm to him, but I mean it was pretty evident. And then the next thing I know is there was a race up in back in those days. We ran what they call a northern tour. Ran about 5 different tracks up in Connecticut and up there, and Marvin and Chester and another guy went up there, and I think straightened Maurice out.
Anthony was telling me about that story the other day, Anthony Artali, when he was on the show.
Yeah, you know how those things, those memories come back. Somebody mentions a word about something like that, and it pulls a memory back up.
All right, I want to go back to the Longco days. You're working there. Ray Putnam was working there. Is Ernie working there also?
Yeah, well, I don't know if Ernie was really working there. He was occupying space there.
Yeah, and driving some for him, maybe?
He was driving. There was a car there that had a Tiger Cub motor in it. It wasn't the one from Pat Sewell, but that Ernie was driving, and it was maintained there. We didn't have a whole lot of space. We had an old garage next door to the building up. Lonco was really unusual. The face of it was right there on Bessemer Road.
I remember seeing it.
And then the back side of it was also a Bessemer Road, but it was the original Bessemer Road where the houses and everything were. And there was 2 old dilapidated garages, and that's where most of the micros and stuff were stockpiled or whatever.
Is this where you and Ray Putnam become friends, or were y'all friends prior to working at Longco?
We probably were associates early on, but that was I would think probably that the early high school days are where Ray and I became close friends.
You shared a great story with me the other day about a micro midget being tied outside there.
Oh, yeah.
And you were given the opportunity to go race this car.
Well, I mean, it was a micro midget that was built by Ernest Sellers, and it probably weighed 3 times as much as most of the micros weighed, because it was just built out of scrap tubing and crazy pieces. Matter of fact, when I walked in the door, I saw the front axle on the micro that was sitting there, and it's a front axle out from under a Crosley.
Uh-huh.
Well, this old micro that was sitting there didn't have an engine in it, and it was it didn't look all that bad, but it had a Crosley rear end in it.
Oh, really?
Was the back rear end in it, and it had a Crosley front axle in it. So I mean, if you could picture that, this was a big micro.
Okay.
And this thing had been sitting in the corner there for who knows how many years. It was, it probably had 3 inches of dust on it. And I made a statement to Ernest one day. I said, I sure would like to put that thing back together. And he says, well, go to it. And I said, well, what can I use for a motor? He said, well, there's an old Wisconsin industrial motor up there. Put that in it.
Okay.
So I rebuilt this old when I say a Wisconsin motor, you have to understand that we're talking about something that would be twice as large as any kind of Briggs and Stratton or Cushman motor, pretty big old motor, and put it in that, and actually put it back together. And Ray also worked on that car with me. We had a good time. One of the most memorable things about that was that we had worked all day Saturday to get ready to go out to the Iron Bowl. And I told Ray, I said, I'm fixing to run home and change clothes. And he says, Flip's got a whole 35-gallon thing of nitromethane. He says, why don't we put a quart of nitro in it? We were running alcohol back then, so we made it blend. So I said, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. And
I left.
Okay.
Well, I came back and I didn't see Ray and I didn't see anything. I said, I wonder if he put the. So I said, well, heck. So I got a quart and I put a quart in it.
Yeah.
So we get to the racetrack and these old things were kind of cantankerous. You had to push them off. They didn't have starters. And I cranked it up, and boy, I mean, it just sounded really good, really responsive. I went out and made a few laps and came back in, and this thing was smoking. It actually had melted an aluminum cylinder head on it. Yeah. Not to the point that it was just liquid, but I mean, it definitely was obvious that something had gone. And Ray and I got to talking, and I said, I only put 1 quart in it. And Ray said, well, I put a quart in it. So
that's too much, right?
That's probably on the level of what a fuel alcohol drag car runs.
What happens after that with the micro after that? Is it done?
Best of my memory, I rebuilt it again and ran it a couple of times, and then next thing is one of the customers of Flip's, can't remember his name. He had a car lot out in Eastlake. Bob had one ear.
Okay.
I can't remember his last name, but anyhow, he bought a micro that had the Tiger Cub type motors in it. And he went to Dan Wells, who was the local BSA and Triumph dealer out in Eastlake.
And our good friend Pat Sewell rode for him. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And they had a Tiger Cub engine that Pat Sewell had run at Daytona and won. I think it was a 250cc class at Daytona. And this guy bought the motor, and I put it in the car, and he asked me if I'd drive it. I said, sure, I'd drive it. And we ran, we ran the squirrel cage. And, that was it wasn't called the Iron Bowl. It was called the squirrel cage. The Iron Bowl was the stock car place.
Okay.
The squirrel cage was the go-kart and micro track.
Smaller track, I'm sure. Yeah.
I think it.
I guess it was dirt also?
No, asphalt.
Oh, it was asphalt.
It was asphalt and had a little bit of bank to it. And the best of memory, it was 1/8 of a mile.
Okay.
So it was pretty tight.
Yeah.
We'd run 4 or 5 races around, and we were in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and on dirt.
Okay.
And at that time, T.D. Houghton, the local Harley dealer in Vesper, he had like 3 micros, and they're quality pieces. They run half of a 45
twin.
They run only half of it.
Wow.
And so I remembered that this micro that I was trying to do with that, this thing was really cantankerous on the carburetor, but like most of the micros were just straight drive. They didn't have any clutch or transmission or anything. Well, when I put the motor out of the motorcycle in there, I didn't take any of the gears out or anything, so it still had the gearbox in it.
Wow.
And we were lining up for the feature, and I couldn't get the thing to clear out, so I just reached back, and the gear shift lever was there, and pulled that thing down in a low gear and got it cleaned out. And so I started, and I don't remember, I think there was 10 cars in it, and I started on the rear of that, and they dropped the green, and that thing took off and cleared out, and I shifted the gears on it, and I ended up trying to remember the guy's name that drove for TD. Golly, it'll come to me in a minute. But anyhow, I passed him going down the back straightaway and took the lead from the rear through the first and second corner to the back straightaway and took the lead.
No kidding.
Just because it had a gearbox in it.
Yeah.
And it really got a jump on them. And I led the whole race. And on the last lap at the checkered flag, golly, I'm trying to remember his name. Anyhow, we crossed the checkered flag, and he ran over me.
Really?
And it made his car go up in the air, and he went over the guardrail into the pit area.
Oh my goodness!
Didn't hurt anything, or it hurt him, but it took, and it where he went up over the car, the tire, the rear tire burned my shoulder with rubber and up the side of my helmet. It was an interesting feat.
I bet it was. Bringing up TD Houghton.
TD really was upset about that. That was just an interesting day.
Yeah, he was well involved and ended up getting a Honda motorcycle and Yamahas and all that dealership in Bessemer.
Yeah, TD was another one of these walk to his own drummer.
Yeah, right.
And sadly enough, he killed himself in an airplane crash, disoriented, and flew into the ground, coming back from Daytona.
Oh, coming back. Okay, I didn't know where he was coming from.
Yeah, he was coming back from Daytona.
Yeah,
got weather and disoriented and flew it in the ground. I remember going down and looking at the wreckage, and I mean, one of the engines was like 3 foot into the ground.
Wow,
so hard. So.
Yeah.
And that was really a sad part of Bobby's life, because Bobby and TD were really, I'm not saying close friends, but good friends.
Yeah, him and yeah.
TD really respected Bobby as far as the airplane goes. Bobby was an airplane person, really enjoyed his airplane. So
yeah,
that was the connection between those two.
So you're at the point you're through running the Micro Midget. You're in high school.
Yeah.
You're involved in the machine shop.
In high school, that was the thing that was most interesting to me. Is I didn't care anything about woodworking or electrical or printing, but it had a machine shop, and the old teacher that taught it was just a cantankerous old guy. But he and I became fairly close friends, and I worked all my spare classes where we had study classes. I would go back down to the machine shop. So I actually worked in the machine shop through my entire high school career.
Yeah.
At one time, I really wasn't a good guy, a good kid. I was not what you call perfect. Matter of fact, not even close to perfect. So
what do you mean?
I was sent off to military school for a
Was
year.
it your attitude? You had a bad attitude, bad disposition?
I don't know about attitude. I mean, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
I just wasn't I wasn't a good guy.
Okay.
You have to understand that my oldest brother was 19 years older. My next brother was 11 years older. And I was the results of 9 months and 9 days after Mother and Dad bought a house in Inslee.
Okay.
And he was a supervisor at U.S. Steel, but so I actually had 3 fathers.
Okay.
And my oldest brother, the military guy, thought that it was time to straighten me out. So
okay.
Off I go to TMI, Tennessee Military.
Yeah.
Institute.
Okay. All right. You go to military school.
Yeah,
all right.
I go up there and I go through that, and I come back to Birmingham, and Birmingham City wouldn't recognize the credits from the military school.
Okay.
So here I am, on the 5th year of high school, and the boys advisor comes down to one of my classes, and he says, "Get your books and get out of here. I got your credits. I got your credits cleared. You're done."
You thought you were set free at this point.
I thought I was set free, and so I gather all my stuff up, and I walk out the back door to get in my old car, and here's my brother.
This is Brother Jack.
His brother,
Yeah,
Jack.
yeah.
And he says, follow me to the house. So we go to the house, and he said, get your necessities, and we're going to Montgomery. What for? He said, well, you're joining the Army. And so...
so what was your, how did you feel about that at the time? I mean, did you...
I didn't have a choice about how I felt about it. I was being commanded to do something that I had little choice of.
I understand. So you had enough respect for him, even though you were out of line in so many areas. You had enough respect for Jack that if he said go, that's what we were doing.
Well, Jack was a 6'1", 275-pound. Didn't really. I don't think no was part of his vocabulary.
I get the picture now. Okay.
So, and on our way to Montgomery, he says, "Look," he said, "I want you to do this, this, and this, and this." He said, "I think you need to go into the aircraft part of it." So, I go into the room in Montgomery where you go in the room out and out of the room in.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they swear you in and say,
okay.
I take the oath. And I took all the tests, and I qualified to be in the aviation program, and ended up going after basic training at Fort Hood, Texas, which was, God had to have made Fort Hood, Texas to train people, because it was one of those places that you might go out one day with an overcoat on,
yeah,
and the next day in a T-shirt.
Really?
Unbelievable place. But anyway, after Fort Hood, went to Fort Rucker, Alabama, where I went through all of the aviation schools that I qualified for. And one day, this sergeant walked in. He said, "I need some volunteers for Hawaii." Now I'm 19 years old. I said, "Man," I stuck my hand up. I was the first one. I'd always heard of Hawaii. It's going to be a great place.
A lot better than Fort Hood, Texas, correct?
Oh, yeah. So, back then, you had a duffel bag that was about, 4 foot long and about 2 foot in diameter. And that's where everything you had in your life was in that thing. That was it. Loaded that thing up, and got on a train and went from from Enterprise, Alabama, that's where Fort Rucker was. Got on a train there and went to California and got on a boat.
Okay.
And this boat went to Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
And stopped there for one day, and it went on to Korea. And I just happened to have to stay on the boat. So I ended up in Korea, and I served 13 months there. Some interesting time.
What were some of the best times in Korea? How did that help you?
The Korean, it was an interesting place. When I first went over there, my first assignment was on the DMZ, which was the 38th parallel, which people today see these pictures of the 38th parallel with these buildings and all that stuff on there. There was absolutely nothing there. It was a flat dirt, no trees, no grass, nothing. There were North Koreans standing on one side of a road, and there were South Koreans standing on the other side of the road.
Really?
And the temperature there was terrible. And I was there in November and December, and it was crazy. It would snow and it would dry up. It would snow and it would dry up. And my responsibility was I had 3 helicopters, 3 H-13s, the little bubble H-13s that had to fly. These had the thing be flyable 24/7. So, and they only let you serve 3 months in that area, and then they move you back.
Okay.
And I moved back, and I ended up being in Seoul for a short period of time, and I ran into a guy in the NCO club, and he was fixing to process out, and he was taking care of a general's helicopter in Pusan, which Pusan is kind of related to be like Miami.
Okay.
It's down on the bottom end. So I actually picked up that duty there and went to Pusan. That was another one. That was getting towards the end of my stay, and was thinking about extending and doing a bunch of stuff. And I told you I wasn't really a good guy.
Right.
But I had a Korean soldier called a Katusa, which it's a Korean military advisory attached to the Army. They were South Korean soldiers, but they were part of the U.S. Army.
Okay.
And I had taken one of his 3/4 ton, they call it a 3/4 ton dually, that I like to go out and ride out in the wilderness. And I got it muddy, brought it back to the motor pool, and he got upset about it because it was muddy, and began to pull me out of the vehicle. And as normal, I struck him, and which was probably the worst thing I could have done. But absolutely, there were 2 officers that were standing within 50 feet, saw everything, so they busted me all the way from an E4 down to an E2.
Wow.
Locked me up in actually handcuffed me to a bed because I was classified as violent.
Right.
And I was sitting there locked in a bed. I mean, I had to get permission to go to the bathroom or whatever. And this old cross-eyed sergeant come in there, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm here." And they'd even took my school-trained MOS away and made me a duty soldier.
Wow.
Which was probably the next to the lowest thing you could be.
Right.
He said, "Well, I need somebody to pull targets for the pistol team." You know, that sounded intriguing, but so he went and it got me released to him, and so we go out to the pistol range, and pulling targets for the pistol team is not exactly what you'd think it would be. I mean, I'm sitting down in a bunker, and there's targets that are right above me, and they keep making these holes in them.
Uh-huh.
So it's like you're on a firing range. And
you were disposable, I guess they thought, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. I was the scum of the earth, the duty soldier, so I really didn't have anything. So we kind of grew friendly with each other, and this old sergeant was a really nice guy, and they came up and they had a pistol match coming up on a Saturday, and I'm out there getting the targets and everything ready, and the old sergeant says, "Well, now one of my officers can't make it. He's incapacitated." Incapacitated is another word for being drunk.
Okay.
Not so. So anyhow, he says, you gotta shoot in his place. Now, I qualified with a weapon when we go through basic training, but I had not shot a .45 or a service revolver in a pretty good while. So I end up shooting in the match, and actually won the match.
Really?
So the next thing I know is I'm permanently attached to the Pusan Area Command pistol team, and we progressed, did well, won a bunch of matches. And the crazy part about this deal is when I struck the Katusa, the general had gone on, they call it holiday leave, for 2 months, and this was around Thanksgiving when I struck him.
Yeah.
So we ended up winning a match in Seoul, and the next thing was that we were going to Hawaii, and we we're going to shoot in Hawaii. So I go with the
You get
team.
to make the trip to Hawaii.
I'm fixing to say here I'm fixing to get what I was
Promised.
volunteered for to start with. So we go to Hawaii, and I'm in the barracks there, and next thing I know is 2 MPs walk in. They say, you're Private Hurley? Yes, sir. Get your bags. What did I do? Get your bags. And so I pick up my duffel bag. It's got everything in it, and we go out to the airport, get on an airplane, fly back to Busan. The general got upset because he couldn't fly his airplane because I had the only school-trained MOS for a HU-1 in Korea, and so he couldn't fly his helicopter, and he was upset. A lot of heads rolled over that.
Really?
Got him back flying, and probably flew for, I don't know, maybe a month or so, and I don't remember where we were or anything, but I got some water out of a stream, and this is one of those things that you're not supposed to do, but
right, you did it.
And you got these little white pills you put in there that's supposed to. Well, that thing caused me to have hepatitis.
Oh my!
And because we were attached to a battle group, if they disclosed that I had hepatitis, they had to quarantine the whole barracks. So the next thing I know is I'm on an airplane and they send me back to Oakland, California, and put me in the hospital.
And you're very, very sick.
I am very sick.
Yes.
I mean, without going into descriptions on it, but it was like convulsions every hour, no control. Lost a lot of weight. Ended up being in the hospital in Oakland for a while, and it's this officer, the whatever you want to call him, personnel officer, comes in. He says, "I don't have any orders on you. What do you think you want to do?" I said, "Well, is there anything in Fort Rucker?" And he says, "Done."
Wow.
So the next thing I know is I'm on an airplane to Fort Rucker, Alabama.
Wow.
And I become part of the school system there where I instructed. And
so you get all your credentials. That might not be the right word.
I did not at that time get my MOS. That was your classification. I did not get it back till I got to Fort Rucker.
Okay.
And the personnel officer down there got all that straightened out and moved me back. I went from a private to an E4 in 2 days.
Yeah.
And I really thought about, re-enlisting and signing up for another 4 years, but I don't know. Vietnam was cooking, and I had seen enough of that I really didn't think I wanted a part of that.
What year is this? 67?
It's earlier than that. This is 64.
64. Oh yeah. So yeah, it's really getting time for Vietnam
things were happening that maybe the public didn't know about, but military-wise, you knew what was going on.
But
it just really didn't really seem attractive to me. So,
right.
I had met a little girl from Enterprise.
Well, yeah. Tell me about this little girl from Enterprise.
Yeah, back then, the days where you rode around to the little car stops and drank a Coca-Cola and sat there and BS'd and whatever. But this little girl and her friend were sitting there in a red Corvair. Never forget it. And my buddy got in the front seat with her, and I got in the back seat with her friend. And we were talking. We rode around and had an enjoyable time. Probably the next week, my buddy says, I really don't like that girl. I said, well, okay. So I called her up and asked her out. And she was hesitant, but finally we had a couple of dates, and I don't know, it wasn't a short time later. I told her, I said, I'm going to marry you.
Wow.
And we did. We got married in May of 64.
Wow.
So
all right.
We've been married almost 60 years.
And her name is?
Martha Jo Tomberlin.
Okay.
That's her maiden name.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
Probably the best thing that ever happened to me in my life.
Yeah.
She produced 2 wonderful children.
Give me your children's name again.
Beverly is the oldest. Beverly is a mother's copy,
Yeah.
and then Connie is the youngest. She's 2 years younger than Beverly, and she's a daddy's copy.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
both of them are very supportive, and both of them. Beverly is an assistant to the Bishop of East Tennessee Episcopal Diocese.
Wow.
And Connie is a vice president at Jack Henry in Birmingham, and they do software for the banks
Okay.
and other things. And both Connie lives here. Beverly lives in Signal Mountain, Tennessee.
Great. So then you bring this young lady to Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh yeah, that was a bad deal taking her. When we first got married, instead of living on post, I lived at her house with her mother.
Yeah.
Which was another one of those times in life when it's kind of trying.
Yeah.
I decided that, hey, this ain't the area for me. I want to go back to Birmingham. So I carried her to Birmingham, and it was a little bit hesitant, but we lived at my mother and dad's house for a short period of time, and I came back to Birmingham to work in the aircraft industry.
Okay.
And I went out to at that time it was Woods Aviation, and I applied for a job, and I was told that the only thing they had available was a sweeper at $1.75 an hour.
Yeah.
And you have to understand, this is back in the 60s, so $1.75 wasn't terrible, but it was nothing.
Right.
I just I didn't think that was what I wanted to do, and I just happened to be driving around and went by Jim Burke Buick, whereas one of my old Micro Midget friends was in charge of the used car department.
What's his name?
Charlie Springfellow.
Okay.
And Charlie says, well, I mean, you ever thought about working in a dealer? I said, yeah, no, but he said, well, I'll get you a job here. So
Yeah.
I went to work for Jim Burke Buick, and probably got fired about 3 or 4 times. Burke Sr. was a really unusual guy. If you can picture this, in 1964, that his car was a white Buick convertible with a white interior in it.
Wow.
And he drove it in with a white suit and a white hat. He never failed. He'd park it right in front of my stall. And so here I am with old greasy ass clothes on. I get in his car and I move it. Oh, he flips out. He has the service manager fire me. And Doc Freeman was the service manager at that time. Really great guy. And Doc would fire me, and 2 days later he'd call me up to come back. I got things straightened out. And Burke was a funny old guy. I mean, you have to understand, this is back in the 60s now. He put cameras all over his shop where he could watch everybody work.
Okay.
And there was a camera right above my stall, but the stall next to it was where they did the undercoating.
Yeah.
And so every now and then the undercoating gun would just happen to shoot up there at the camera. That's another reason that I probably left the environment there. But I worked at the assorted dealers around Birmingham.
Yeah, worked with Jimmy Henry and some of those guys there.
Yeah, Jim Henry worked at Burke. Jim Henry was one of their top technicians.
Yeah.
Did a really good job. Jim and I were friends. Jairus Holt was also there.
Tell me about the Grace and Rose. And
that was another step in my.
Is this after you came back from the military as well?
Yeah, this is part of this is part of the working for the assorted dealers and in different places. Grayson had a car. It was a transmission shop, but he also took in auto repair and whatever. And so I had a whole area in the back where I could work on cars. I'd have 2 or 3 cars a day that had to do brakes or clutch or excuse me, cylinder head, just all sorts of crazy stuff. Grayson was one of these kind of, anybody that knew anything about Grayson knew that he was a tick above the average. Yep. Grayson was one of the innovators at the fairgrounds with stock cars, and he was actually the one that got Rocco and Cheater's speed shop started.
Is that right?
He wasn't part of it, but he's the one that encouraged them to do what they did. And probably not very many people can remember the old Rocco and Cheater speed shop.
But then a lot of guys that worked there, he really assisted them in starting their own transmission shops, if I'm not correct.
No question about it.
Yeah, Roy Milligan,
Travis
Mullinax.
Those are the 2 outstanding parts of it.
Yeah.
But Grayson was all the time had a some kind of deal going on. And one day he came to me and he said, I'll give you, I don't remember what the amount was, but he said there's a Chevrolet sitting there on 4 stands. The wheels are off of it. He said, if you can do the brake job on that thing in less than an hour, he said, I'll give you, I think it was $100, but it was significant. It was a significant amount of money at that time. So I said, I took the challenge, and I knocked the brake job out way less than an hour, and I walk up there to him, that. So he hands me the $100, and he turns around, and this guy standing beside him gives him $500. he had bet the guy. So it was one of those crazy deals that. But the other good story about Grayson was that he had a device called a mongoose.
Describe that to us. I mean, you talked about it the other day, but I don't know if I got the true understanding.
Mongoose was a wooden box,
okay,
about 2 foot long, maybe a foot wide, and it had a closed up area on half of it. The other half of it had a screen over it, and there was a tail sticking out from underneath the little hole in the side of it.
Okay.
What this device was is it was spring loaded, and when you unlatched it, it would take that tail and it would throw it at you.
Uh-huh.
So most of the people would go up there and they'd poke around into the screen part of it trying to get that thing. And Grayson had turned that deal on them, and it was a coontail, and,
yeah,
and it would fly out and hit them in the chest, and everybody get a good laugh about it.
That's correct, yeah.
And one day, a guy named Roland Jackson, who was a key salesman for Napa.
Okay.
Matter of fact, he was the top salesman for genuine parts in Napa. He told Grayson that he had this guy that down South Alabama that wanted to see the mongoose, and said, we want you to turn him loose on it.
Okay.
All Grayson so we all gathered there in the shop one evening.
Now, y'all, this is a backwards joke, correct? It's going to happen. So this is. So this salesman's got a pistol?
Well, no. This is the old guy that.
Okay.
And it's an old woods looking guy.
Okay.
And he brings him up there, and they go through the spiel, and Grayson turns the mongoose on him, and he hits the old guy in the chest, and the old guy reaches in his pocket, pulls out a pistol, and shoots Grayson about 3 times.
Yeah.
And Grayson is standing there with his fingers on his, looking for the holes. It was a blank pistol, of course. They all set him up for this. And I mean, there must have been 10 people there. It was probably the funniest thing you can ever imagine seeing.
How did Grayson take this?
Oh, Grayson could give it out, and he could take it.
He could take it. Okay.
It wasn't a big deal about that. But
so I'm pretty good friend. I'm really good friends with the Mullinax, Travis's children,
yeah.
Chris, and you shared the story the other
Chip.
day about having at their house playing canasta, I think you said.
Yeah, we the family.
Now, does this gun thing come as a byproduct of what you saw here, maybe, or the cap gun, or how's that?
No.
Okay.
Travis and his wife and Chip and I don't even think Craig wasn't even born then, but
Yeah.
we had our children were in these things they call pumpkin seats,
Okay.
where you carried them around.
Yeah.
And we'd go play cards at Travis' house, and we were playing cards, and Travis and I had already set this deal up as he stood up and pulled out his pistol and shot me, and I just fell over on the floor. Probably one of the worst things I ever did in my life.
Yeah.
My wife, to this day, now that was done probably back in '64 or '65, and to this day, my wife does not forget about that.
Yeah, I spoke with.
That was not a wise thing to do.
I spoke to Travis's wife, then Miss Karen, the other night about it, and she had vivid memories as well.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And, I think Chip was probably too young to remember it, but
yeah. Great
Chip
story.
was another interesting story in my life. Chip worked at the dealership, but at the World Transmission,
Yep.
ran it. At one time, Travis actually sponsored my old race car, had this name on the side of it.
Yeah, that's back to 55 or something,
Yeah.
way back there.
That was a long time back. But later on in life, when I had the shop over downtown Birmingham, Chip wanted to run I think they called it a street stock back then.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about it, and he picked out a old Monte Carlo,
mm-hmm.
and we put together, built him a 400 small block. Couldn't be radical. I mean, they had rules on it back then. And the funny thing now, this is the funny part, is Chip would work. We raced on Friday night, so he'd get loose from the World Transmission and come down to the shop at about 5:30 to load up. And I'd always have some reason that we couldn't get everything together. So the time we got to the racetrack, it was the time to line up for the first heat race.
Okay.
So his comment was, "I never get any practice." I
Yeah.
said, "Well, you don't really need any practice."
Uh-huh.
And he would win. I mean,
Right,
Chip actually won a lot of races in
Right.
that car. And this is at the end of it, one of his helpers said, "We just got to put a lower gear in the car. It needs a lower gear. It'll go faster."
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd already told him, I said, "No, we don't need a lower gear, da-da. Anyhow, they put a lower gear in the car and blew it up.
Mm-hmm.
So that ended that deal there. The next segment is Jimmy Kitchens. Jimmy actually worked for me at the shop, and he was a parts runner and kind of a gopher type deal. But and Jimmy decided he wanted to build a street stock, so we built the same place that Chip had his. We built a street stock there in that same area. Really innovative. It was a Monte Carlo, and we'd move the seat back in it and just the pedals, and but it was the same deal. Jimmy would get off work at 5:30, but I'd always have something that would delay us, so never got to the racetrack in time to do any practice.
Okay.
He would complain about that. I just need to go out there and do practice. I said, "You don't need to do any practice."
Mm-hmm.
And he was winning races. I
Right.
mean, he had a good career.
Yes, he did.
At Birmingham in that particular division. And one Friday, I was not there at the shop, so I mean he got loaded up and everything, and off to the racetrack he goes, and what does he do? Knocks the fence down.
Does he?
Yeah. So was a lesson in life, and if you ever confronted him, I think he'll tell you that story.
Yeah, yeah.
That was one of those deals where you had to eat crow.
You helped a lot of good racers back then. There's no doubt about that.
You know, I enjoyed it. I thought that was part of being a business owner, racer. I mean, you know, Terry Wesley, Terry and I worked together. Wayne Ferguson, Wendell Morgan. I mean,
yeah, some really good guys.
Pat Sewell. I mean, I don't know. That was part of my life that I enjoyed helping people.
Let's go back to you had another really, really good guy that went on and had a really great career in NASCAR that helped you name your business. Let's talk about him for a moment.
This was back in, I had transitioned I'd worked for Bobby Allison for a while, and we'd had some problems with getting the machine work done, and I was driving around, and I drove down Lum Avenue. If anybody can remember Lum Avenue, there used to be a Double L barbecue on the bottom, and then the next building was a place called K&T Equipment, and it was an old military Quonset hut.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw this thing that says K&T Machine Shop up on a marquee. So I whipped in there, and I go in and I meet these two people, and we go down in this Quonset hut, and here's this room is full of equipment, still in boxes. Had a crank grinder, I mean, block mill, just a whole bunch. I said, what's the story? He said, well, we bought all this stuff. We had an employee that was going to run it, and he disappeared. You know, typical deal. It just disappeared. So I made a deal with him. He said, you know, I said, if I put all this stuff together, how much would you charge me to let me use? He said, look, if you put it together, he said, we'll give you half of everything you can make out of it.
Wow. So
that's how I started working there. And it grew to the point that I really needed some help.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a customer friend named Ronnie Crooks that worked at the pipe shop for one time, and he was working over at Moore and Hanley selling lumber. And Ronnie had he was a car guy, like drag stuff. And I said, you know, I need somebody to run the front office. Would you be interested in doing that? He said, well, what are you going to call it? I said, I don't know. What do you think we ought to call it? He said, we're going to call it HESCO.
Wow.
I said, what is that? He said, that's Hurley Engine Service Company.
Wow.
So Ronnie is the one that named the company. That was in 1971 or 70 or 71 that we started there. And
what a storied career he had, and still has. It's still going on.
Look, this guy was the most innovative thinker about shock absorbers, and where it all started was on motorcycles.
Wow.
He was a motorcycle rider. And when you say that, I'm not talking about street bikes. I'm talking about off-road stuff,
right? Bull
tacos and just all sorts of crazy. But he was always tinkering with the shocks.
Wow.
Always. And which graduated. Ronnie worked for me for many years, and then got involved with NASCAR, and he worked for actually worked for Childress.
Yeah.
At when Earnhardt was at his peak.
Wow.
And he ended up. He worked several places. Probably one of the major places with Gibbs. He was in charge of the shock program at Gibbs.
Yeah, put them on the map in a lot of ways.
And that brought his title up.
Yeah.
Dr. Shock.
That's correct. Yeah.
Ronnie Crooks.
Yeah. He's always been nice to me. I remember.
Look, Ronnie is a great guy, and you know, every year we have the banquet there at Talladega for the old racers, and Ronnie is always my guest.
Yeah.
I say guest. He's part of my life.
Yeah.
And he's transitioned over life. He left Gibbs and went to Penske, and then ended up taking over Penske shocks, and then Penske had some transition people change, and so Ronnie left Penske and is at Fox Shocks now.
That's right. Yeah.
Still active, still goes and helps people at the racetracks, and he's been off-roading and the drag stuff now more than he has the NASCAR stuff. So an interesting, but quality individual.
Yeah, no doubt
from
about it.
Hueytown, Alabama.
That's correct. Another quality person. That's correct.
We hope you enjoyed that episode of Rings, Gears, and Opinions. Make sure you like and subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. Come back next Tuesday to hear part 2 of the Lee Hurley interview.